Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening,
Good,
Ken.
good to see everyone made it this week. Glad to have our viewers this week. We thank you all for coming in and watching. This week we're going to discuss Nehemiah and some of the things he went through with Israel, and I think we can kind of relate with what's going on here. So if you'd like to take us out, Dr. Ricks.
Okay. This is an old joke, but I still like it. It's a good one. It rained and rained. It's sort of like it's been doing in Oklahoma and East Texas lately. It rained and rained and started flooding the whole area. And this man prays to God to save him because it's raining and surrounding his house and the water's coming up the first floor. And he looks, sloshes through the first floor. And he sees a little rowboat come by and they say, "Get in the boat." He says, "No, I'm waiting for God." The water keeps rising. He climbs up to the second floor, walks out in the second floor balcony. The water's up that high. And a guy in a speedboat comes by and says, "Hop in the boat." He says, No, I'm waiting for God to rescue me. It keeps raining. The water keeps going higher and higher and higher. He has to climb on the roof to get out of the water. He's on the roof. Flies over a helicopter. Whoop, 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 whoop. And they let down a little ladder. They say, "Grab the ladder. We'll pull you out." He says, No, I'm waiting for God. The guy in the helicopter begs him. The water is still rising. The river is still rising. He says, "I'm waiting for God." No, the helicopter flies away. Well, you guessed it. He drowned. He goes to heaven. And he just can't. He said, "God, I don't understand. I waited for you. How come you didn't rescue me?" And God shook his head and said, "What are you talking about? I sent 2 boats and a helicopter."
That's an oldie but a goodie. The people who think that they're going to be, what's the word, taken up, raptured away, or kind of like the guy standing on the roof, Exactly. They're gonna be shocked. Why am I still here when all this stuff's going down?
Oh, they're gonna say one day, "Oh, maybe it was talking about the second resurrection and not the rapture." Oh, be too late.
Bit late for that.
Yeah. Natalie wrote a joke, and I'm gonna tell Natalie's joke. I'll probably get it wrong, but at any rate, here it is. Her joke. Mrs. Doofus says, "Honey, are you sure you don't know this person that keeps calling so frequently?" And he says, "Well, what's his name?" "His name is Toll Free."
You're going to pay for that one. I know you are.
And then she said, Mrs. Doofus said, "Are you sure you don't know this Mr. Toll?"
Can that be Mr. Free?
Yeah. Well, since we didn't get a lot of emails on the Charlotte thing, maybe Ken and I will just make a few quick comments on it and move on to the next topic. I think the people in Charlotte acted admirably. They pushed for unity.
Charleston?
Is it Charleston, South Carolina? Charleston, South Carolina. They pushed for unity and harmony among the races, and that's wonderful. However, it would appear that some Democratic politicians decided to use this for political capital to push for things like gun rights and other things, which is just taking advantage of the opportunity and maybe creating more division in America. I still think the majority went with the Charleston unity, but the politicians are keeping it from being a pure victory. What do you think, Ken?
Well, I think something very interesting happened there that did not happen in, was it Missouri and not Boston? The last 2 or 3 places we've had all these issues. Baltimore, and then down by I forget the other name, but anyway, where there was riots and all that, and then the people came out, the Sharptons and that of the world came out and stirred up a mess. Well, that didn't happen here. They went down there, several of them, but they didn't. You didn't hear. I didn't hear from them. I didn't hear anything from them. So what's different? Why did this not happen? I think those people in that church and in that community said, "We don't want you here." I think those people didn't want him there, and they said, "You are not going to do that. What you did at these other places, you're not doing that to our community."
The
Those
people.
people are admirable, and they have huge hearts. And there was one of them, I think his name was West or something. He went on one show and he was mad at him for forgiving this guy. He was furious that they would actually do. You can't forgive someone that fast. That's what he was saying. He was accusing them of being Christians basically for forgiving them, and he didn't like it because he wants strife. These people don't profit unless there's trouble, and those people wouldn't allow it, and that is admirable, and that is amazing that we saw that.
I believe they want most blacks thinking victimhood, which they think is better for stirring up, getting money for all the different programs and stirring up votes for the Democratic Party. And the truth is, the Democratic Party has been the one that has, well, they stood for slavery, they stood for Jim Crow. Well, even as late as the 30s, FDR vetoed an anti-lynching bill. Now, I realize that, maybe they were changing then and he was doing it because the Democratic politicians were pushing him. Just one more final thing that few people know because people don't read much. In 1957, Eisenhower offered a bill, a civil rights bill, probably better than the one that passed in the 60s. LBJ, the Democrats controlled the Senate. He was the Senate Majority Leader. He killed the bill. You're going to say, why 8 years later did he go ahead and pass one? It's all what's in their political advantage and who gets the credit. They didn't care that much about black people. He could have put it through in 1957. A lot of people don't know the Democratic Party until they saw the advantages that black voters would give them in buying votes with a lot of government programs. They were the party of racism. I just think few people know that. Even in the 60s when the Civil Rights Bill passed, it got more Republican votes than it got Democratic votes. And that's a record that anybody can look up.
Yeah,
most people don't know that.
Al Gore's dad voted against it. They don't know. People. But Byrd, he was a Democrat. He was celebrated till he died. He was a Grand Kleagle in the KKK. Senator Byrd. He died recently. They're all hollering about the rebel battle flag above the courthouse. It's a battle flag. It wasn't the Confederate flag. People don't know that either.
Virginia flag.
The people that put that, the man who put that up there, I think his name is Hollings or Hastings or Hollings. I think it's Hollings. He was a Democrat, and the reason he put it up there was he was thumbing his nose at the bill that was passed by Kennedy to an anti or a pro integration or anti, it was a desegregation law. He didn't like it, so he put that flag up on top of the courthouse, and now the Democrats are hollering that it should come down under this Republican governor. I say the Democrats should go there. The man who put it up there is still alive. He should go there. He should pull it down. He's 93 years old, I think. He should be to pull it down. And him and all the Democrats should stand there and apologize to everybody for all the decades and century and a half of what they have done to try and divide and tear this country apart. That's what should happen. Obviously, that's not what's going to happen.
Father, if you want to hear something really deep and scary, when I was, I believe, a freshman in college, and I wish I had written all the references down, but I don't remember them. But there was a black scholar who said, and he's mostly speaking of liberal politicians, most of whom were Democrats. He says the way they're pushing black Americans into these government dependency programs is going to be a disaster. And as we look at things right now, he's right. Blacks are making we still are making progress, many, but a good chunk of people are actually going backwards because of government dependency programs primarily pushed by the Democrats. And very few people see how dangerous that is. I know it's a touchy subject, so I'll move on to the next topic before I offend anybody. But I'm just telling you what I really think. And if you had read the guy's material, he predicted exactly what we see in many big cities now, like the big one in Michigan. Okay, the next big thing in the world is judicial activism. That's where the judges legislate from the bench, as they did in the last 2 or 3 decisions that come down this week. It takes power away from the voters, because the voters, well, it's the People's Congress elected by the voters. That's where the people have their greatest influence. Well, if the judges can just undermine the voters, then democracy is being undermined.
Yeah. Judge Alito, not Alito, Judge, what's his name, the Chief Justice, he wrote the dissent for today's decision, and he basically said the same thing. Democracy is in jeopardy right now. It's not our representative republic is how it should have been labeled. It's in jeopardy.
A friend of mine posted on Facebook from Bill Ayer's book. I think it was the 8 steps to destroy the democracy, and he went down, and every single one of them we're doing right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, they've wrote him and a bunch of him, Ayers and Dorn and all them people. They wrote the playbook for what's going down right now, and they got I don't want to get into it deeply, but they wrote the playbook on this, and they're playing it out.
And judges rewriting healthcare laws. Well, when it's clear what's written in 7 places, they just rewrite it the way they want it. That's up to Congress to do. And as I say, by the way, that's one reason for the American Revolution. King George was appointing judges who were just, at least the way they saw it, running roughshod over what the people wanted, because people had no rights. Well, our federal judges appointed for life are now doing the same thing. It's not just a legal opinion, they're literally legislating from the bench.
Yeah, they're not interpreting the Constitution. They're not interpreting anything. Law. They're creating their own.
And
with Roe versus Wade, same thing.
Yeah. The other big item, well, there may be several. One is terrorism is still gaining strength. A lot of big attacks. Abortion appears to be in great shape thanks to the court. I'll just show the article. States voters try to get bans on abortion, and federal judges block it. Here's the one that I think you may find most interesting on abortion. I hope you can read that headline.
Yep, we can see it real well. Till I talk and override it.
And what it's now, just reading the article, satanic groups. Missouri has several things which have made it a little harder for abortion clinics, and only one exists, and that's in St. Louis, and they may even be in some danger. And so the Satanists and their secularists also in their lawsuit and in their party, these people basically say, hey, we're all for human sacrifice. I mean, that's pretty much because that's what Satanists did in the pagan days. They said, we don't consider babies to be alive, and we don't want to even have to think about babies feeling pain and being alive until they're born. You're violating our state. And America's gone so far that a lawsuit like this is taken seriously. And with the kind of judges we have, what might happen? They might rule against the state of Missouri. I'm not saying they will, but would you guarantee they won't?
Would you bet against it nowadays?
Why would they give any credibility to a Satanist group to begin with? And so if they'll give credibility to them, they take credibility from us. They devalue true religion, true believers, people that turn the other cheek and do their best. And you go to somebody as evil as a satanic group who says they want Satan to rule the world, they've got to be, obviously they're demonically influenced. to do that, and then to be on the wrong side of everything. Why would you take them seriously?
Yeah, that's
Because it
just
seems
true.
like Satan is running roughshod over this country right now.
Satan is probably doing the jig and celebrating right now. The moral pivot of America is pivoting down. Want to say hi to Bill and Carolyn, and pray for Carolyn. She's got some tough medical issues, so pray for Carolyn. But hi to Bill and Carolyn. The final thing that I think may be important, well, I'm not sure where it stands. Earlier in the week, Greece was supposed to do some kind of austerity program to pay off the debt they owe uh, to Europe and the euro, but the socialist government refused to do it, so they're under pressure. And they were supposed to make a deal this week. Well, then the Europeans, I guess not wanting Europe to break up, we're going to make a very favorable 5 or 6 month deal with Greece, real easy payment terms. But I have not heard any final word on that. Anybody heard any final word whether they actually made a deal, or is it still up in the air?
They're still being quiet about it. I can't find anything on the breaking or anything right now. But if something does come in, it's possible. I'll bring it up. But
Well,
they go
Somebody had
ahead.
told me, and it might have been one of you gentlemen, that Russia was talking about bailing them out.
hmm.
Yeah, last week they were talking to Russia, trying to get Russia to do it. And I mean, Russia's pretty rough right now, but if they could gain one of the EU countries to come over to their side, and they'd be basically buying them. I mean, why not? I mean, all these European countries, Greek and Portugal, and they're all hard left commie anyway. The guy running Greece right now is a socialist. Why not join up with them? They're probably more socialist than Russia is right now. So why not join in? Why not? In fact, they may drag Russia down the socialist, you know, sewer pipe further. So why not?
One financial advisor has this. He says he thinks, assuming that they do make this deal, maybe the Germans are buying control of Europe, they make this deal with Greece. He says the problem with it is Spain has a much bigger debt, but they're doing at least their version of austerity program. Next year, Spain may say, look at the deal you gave Greece. Why should we continue with the austerity program? Give us a good deal like that too. He says they either have to be consistent and tough, or they're headed for financial trouble in Europe. And doesn't that sound rational?
It does. What did the world look like pre-World War II? What was going on? What was the economy like? What was the morality like in America? Um, a lot of these things are parallel.
Oh, here
And
I do have something on the Greece. Sorry. It says Greek Prime Minister puts bailout deal to referendum for July 5th. So Greeks talks with his creditors took a dramatic turn already early Saturday over there right now, with the radical left government announcing a referendum in just over a week on the latest proposed deal and urging voters to reject it.
Wow. He owes to reject it. So they don't want any austerity unless the voters force him into it.
They just want money given to them so they can keep giving it to the people so they can keep running it further down the socialist rat hole.
Well, you remember last week they had a run on the banks in Greece as people with money in the bank are scared spitless about what may happen. So anyway, I guess we'll find out in July how that works itself out. This evening we're going to discuss Nehemiah, a real Bible hero. Now his famous line is, "Should a man such as I run and hide?" Isn't that a great line? You can almost think of John Wayne. Should a man such as I run and hide? Has that John Wayne-esque to it. As we review, I'm going to just review a little of the background of Israel that might, put a little context on it. Although if you read Nehemiah 9, almost the entire chapter at that celebration, they talk about the history of Israel in a repentant manner. But Israel was one kingdom for 120 years, the United Kingdom for the most part. Then it divided into two nations. The southern, well, it was three tribes, basically, became the house of Judah, and then the lost 10 tribes became the northern house of Israel, or Samaria. Judah had 20 kings, Samaria had 20 kings. Of the 20 kings of Judah, 8 were good, 12 were bad. Of the 20 kings in Israel, none were good. It went from bad, worse, the very worst, occasionally just bad, worse, worse, worse. You know, it was almost downward. Ever since they kicked out the holy days and substituted pagan stuff for God's religious structure. And eventually Judah went downhill. So here comes Nehemiah, and he's a government worker working for the emperor, and he's his wine taster. And so he tastes wine for the king or the emperor, whichever title you like. And he's his wine taster, because in those days, palace intrigue, wine was a weapon of choice. Poison, you poison the drink. Poison was a weapon of choice. So the wine taster would drink it, and they'd watch him for a little while and be sure it was okay. It was a great job, but not very good retirement benefits.
Yeah. That 30 and out could be 30 minutes.
Yeah. So he had a really good job. And like the others, he was born in Babylon. He'd been there all his life, and many of the Jews in Babylon were doing pretty well. And his brother went to see how the ones who had returned to Jerusalem and Judah were doing, and he came back. He said, "It's awful, horrible what's going on over there. The place is a shamble. They haven't rebuilt the wall. The temple is neglected, and other bad stuff." And Nehemiah waited 4 months, and then he approached the king. And when you read it, it doesn't sound like much. But in those days, if you were, that's a relatively low-level position. He's not like the top advisor or something. You're supposed to smile and keep the king happy, and that's your job. And you start frowning and telling him your trouble, it could be off with your head, or in the dungeon, or some other bad thing. So it was actually, he took a risk. And he obviously prayed and fasted first before he did anything.
But it sounds like his day-to-day life was taking a risk.
Yeah, you're right. Come to think of it,
maybe leaving that job and then to Judah might have been a break on one level.
Yeah, that's right. He never thought about it. When is somebody going to get some poison in the king? And he probably, I'll bet, it was a little bit like being partly a wine steward too. I bet he guarded that wine and gave him the best wine, and guarded that wine. Has that cork been tampered with? Pour it out. Keeping the king happy was his job, so he was taking a risk. But he did pray and fast first. And if there are lessons we could take, we should be risk takers for God.
Something my wife was telling me. Our youngest son told her that he goes, I find that I can almost do more than I think I can. So when he's playing ball, he doesn't realize he's as fast as he is, or he catches or throws, whatever it is. He realizes when he plays at the end of the game, he goes, I did more than I thought I could. And some of these Bible heroes, they did more than they thought they could too, but they just had so much faith that God was going to do the right thing, and they had a calling. And when you have a calling, and inside yourself, God wants me to do this. You put your faith in God, and you will do more than you think you can.
What do you think, Ken?
I think I gotta unmute my mic first before I say anything. But yeah, I think that's the case. People in their daily jobs sometimes I think probably can relate to that, because sometimes your work will throw a ton of stuff at you, and by the end of the day, you've managed to accomplish all these things that needed done, and it seems like they'll throw more at you. It's because they give it to the people that can handle it. Sometimes it don't seem all that great an idea to you, but and you people just find a way that are built this way, find a way to get things done with just do it by just doing it, and not playing or crying or whining or goofing or whatever it is, but they just find a way to make it happen. And that's a lot of these people in the Bible have
By
that.
the way, I heard someone on television, and he was talking about. He says we need to be risk takers for God. He says on your job, you're afraid to let anybody know that you're a Bible believing Christian. He says it's America's going down the tubes, and people who do believe in biblical morality need to stand up and let people not be afraid. I mean, you don't have to go around proselyting on the job, but let people know when it's appropriate that you're not afraid of your beliefs. Because a lot of people are hiding, and a lot of churches are now, they see the writing on the wall, and they're doing what they're supposed to do to stay politically correct.
Yeah, I think that'll be worse than just being what we are. I think the people that are hiding are going to stand out more than just the people, because we were talking about this before the program. We don't have crosses, we don't have plastic Jesuses, we don't have symbols, and we don't go out on the usual holidays that the rest of the world, and like Easter and all that. We don't do any of that. So we're not there. We're in church on Saturday, Sabbath, not Sunday. We're not there. We don't exist pretty much to most of the people that'll be looking for that.
Yeah, I'm curious because there are churches now that are teaching global warming because otherwise they could lose their tax exemption in some places. I'm curious now with the new thing about homosexual marriage, what's going to happen to churches when pastors go, I can't do that. It's going to create quite a fuss throughout the country. And I guess there might be some pastors that do. The Archdiocese of somewhere came out and said that he was very upset about this morning and said that they may not, they're not going to comply with that apparently. It's been so long since I read the article, like 10 hours ago. I can't remember it, but he made it sound like the Catholic Church under his watch was not going to do that. So this Christianity, in nominal Christianity, that have just the basic of love your neighbor and you don't do these things, we're under attack all over the place.
Yep. I just want to take a quick minute. There's been people asking questions during the program. If you're logged into Google Plus, you have a Google or a Gmail account, you're logged into Google Plus and you're watching. If you look up on the black screen there where you're seeing the black border, there is a series of 3 rows of dots. If you click on those dots, you'll get a Q&A icon and a showcase icon or something similar to that. But if you click on that Q&A icon and type, it'll allow you to type a question and I'll see it. And we can share it with everyone and we can review it. So that's how you do it. Google Plus, logged into your Gmail account, and you click on it's not obvious like everything else you see on the web, but it's 3 rows of dots, a little square of dots. If you click on it, it looks like a little Rubik's Cube. If you click on that, it'll bring up the option, this blue bubble that says Q&A. So, sorry, go ahead. Just wanted to get that in there because we've had some questions.
And if another thing that Nehemiah did, and you'll see it in chapter 2, 15 and 16, is when he got to Jerusalem after the king gave him the cavalry escort and the documents to give to all the governors on the other side of the Euphrates River. When he got there, he didn't show his hand right away. At night he rode all around the city of Jerusalem, inspecting all the walls, how bad the condition was. So he got all the facts and was cautious before he met with the leaders. I'm thinking, it's good for us to be smart and cautious like he was. And of course, then he was brave and bold after that, and got the people. Well, either he was, I think he did a little bit of both. He was both persuasive and he shamed them a little bit too.
The courage it must take to walk into a city, a single man, and gather your information, and then condemn the city and the behavior, the thoughts, the practices, the leadership, the town council, the courage it must have taken for somebody to do that, and actually make a change. Because people that are sinning, unless the Holy Spirit comes, they don't want to stop. I have a fellow I know, he says, don't tell me the truth. I'm happy like I am, and if I know the truth, then I'll have to change, and I don't want to change. Life is good. Life is sweet right now.
Willingly ignorant.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you hear someone like Waters World or jaywalking, and you think, man, ignorance is bliss in this country, isn't it?
They haven't taught our kids anything in the last 50 years. And
people just don't know history. They don't know history.
It's like that historical fact about 3/5 black slaves account 3/5 as far as congressional voting population is concerned. Get his name right here. Frederick Douglass thought that was bad until one day he was doing some research and someone explained to him that was actually an anti-slavery amendment put in by, and by the way, one of the reasons they revolted from Britain was so they wouldn't have to have slavery, at least those colonies that didn't want it. It was put in there to fight slavery because they reasoned that if they didn't do that, the slave states would outvote them in Congress. They'd never end it. What they thought would happen was, maybe after the war, a decade or two, they'd vote slavery out of existence. I mean, obviously, a lot of mess happened. They weren't able to do that, but Lincoln tried, but that's another story. But the point is, it was actually an anti-slavery vote. And Frederick Douglass was very proud of it when he realized it. But they don't teach that in school. They don't teach that in college. I bet you could interview 100 college graduates. You'd be lucky to find 2 that would know that.
Right. All they know is, because I heard it on the news the other day, well, it was terrible that the slave states or that they only made, in the Constitution, only made people 3/5, black people were only 3/5 of a person. They're stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't understand why that was in there. The slave states wanted to not count, they didn't want the blacks to be citizens, but they wanted to count them as citizens so they could get more people and more representation in Congress. They wanted it both ways, and the founder, they said, no, we're not going to give you that. You can't play that. So they kept their numbers down, their representation down in Congress.
And I think if you got to be a free black person, then you could get full count and full vote. But that's another story, I think. I want to read one more thing that Nehemiah exemplified. And this is something that when I first started reading it, I realized this is really surprising. Nehemiah indicated, he shamed the Israelites. God detests cowards. And Nehemiah was very brave, even when Sanballat and the Arabs and the others threatened him. He just said, in your face, baby. I mean, maybe he wasn't quite that blunt, but in his own way. He was very, very brave. And I want to read Revelation 21, verse 8. And I want you to put this in the context now. And the context is, these are the people at the very end of the Bible who don't get in God's family. But the cowardly, now the King James says the frightened, but it's the same thing. The cowardly, unbelieving, abominable, murderers, sexually immoral, some people could translate that pimps, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake that burns with fire, and they experience a second death and are burned up. But you realize cowards are lumped with all those other bad categories like murderers. In other words, there will come times when we will have to, kind of suck it up and have faith in God and be brave. Because God does not like cowards. And I think one reason God loved David, because he was brave.
I think it stems from the fact that once we know God and we have His Holy Spirit, we have nothing to fear, and we should recognize that, accept Him, and respect for Him, and not fearing anything else.
Yeah, Mark says, don't, when they come to arrest you and take you before the synagogues and the judges, which means that the churches are going to turn on everybody. Do not think beforehand what you're going to say. Don't plan out how you're going to answer the questions. When you get there, I think that the Holy Spirit will speak for you, and you'll say things that they are going to be astonished. How did you know that? Because when Christ was taken before the Sanhedrin, I'm certain when he named things, they all sat back and go, "There's no way he knows this. That's all in secret." Well, he'd have to be an insider to know that, and I think that just upset them even more and more as well.
I can't help but laugh when I hear that. What he knew, what he had out of him, when he was drawing in the dirt, and they all bailed. I just can't help. It's just, to me, that's just brilliant.
He's probably writing something like Pharisee Joe and Little Bobby and Pharisee Bill.
Yeah.
And, Vanessa. I'm sure he was something about, let me get out of here before he writes something about me.
Oh, they probably kicked dust up. They probably kicked that dust getting out of there.
And also, he remained humble. That is, Nehemiah remained humble. And I think that's a wonderful thing, to remain humble in doing such a great work as he was doing. And that's always going to be a challenge for everybody. When you have a little success, or God's Spirit gives you some success, and I'm looking at Nehemiah 3:5. Some other translations are a little better at this, but they're doing all the dirty work of building the wall and brick and mortar and cleaning up the broken bricks and stuff. And next to them was the Tekoites made repairs, but their nobles did not put their shoulders to the work of their Lord. Now the other translation said the work was too dirty for them. But everybody else did, except certain nobles who were just too good for that kind of thing. And that's a bad attitude, like, I'm too good to be doing this kind of work.
And that means that you're arrogant, self-righteous, and you think somebody else is beneath you because that work has to be done, so someone beneath me needs to do it. And a good leader works alongside his people, sets the example.
I mean, it may well be that there are times when your time is best used doing other things, but one of the theories as to why God let the worldwide apostatize was that the ministry got corrupted. Now, obviously not all, but a lot of them. And they started feeling they were too good to have to do the stuff the regular people did, and have to park where the regular people parked. And somebody carried their briefcase. And you've heard some of those stories, right?
I grew up in that church. I saw it from every angle. I saw it as a toddler.
So you know what I mean, don't you?
Oh yeah, I've had them tell me. I've had them tell me that the Levitical priesthood went away and that he replaced it. And I had to do what he said because the scripture in Leviticus, I think it is, this is, the matter comes before your gates. You go to the Levites and you present this to them and do not turn from the right hand or to the left hand. Because we don't have Levites anymore, so you have to do what I say.
But that's partly a misunderstanding. You don't have to go to them if you make the, I mean, someone could argue, well, if you do go to some kind of a church and mediation court with church leaders, if you choose to go, then you should probably try to follow their advice unless it's totally stupid. But you don't have to go. I mean, there's nothing in the Bible that says, I have to ask this guy how I'm going to make this decision. And some of those ministers got meddled in people's lives. Well, what can I say?
I know a
Beyond what they
man.
needed to.
I know a man that went to his minister in the early 70s, and he said, you need to sell and cash everything you got because Christ is going to be back. And I think he said 72 is what the book said, 72 or 75. And this man gave his life savings, everything he had, to the church, and never recouped like he was. And you know, he really, that man's a, and by the way, still attends with us.
By the way,
Not broken.
at least he still has a good heart for God. I would just say that the ministry, which lost their humility, or at least some of them did. I mean, think about it. Don't we all know that, like, we think that the bubble's going to burst next year in the financial, but we don't know that for certain. They could, God and Satan and whoever else could allow to kick it around, kick it down the road for 3 or 4 more years easily. Don't we have to be humble enough to admit to people that we're speculating, but we don't know for sure?
Right. And I tell my people here, listen, what you're getting is my interpretation. This is Dave talking. And I could be completely wrong. I could be completely right. Use your own head. Hear what I say, and then verify. Check for yourself. Because I make mistakes. I just what it is. I'm a human being.
And like I tell people, have at least a few weeks of food in your house and some extra cash hidden away in case we have a crisis like a run on the bank or several. But I could be wrong. They may not. You may never need that stuff. I mean, no one can predict for sure. But
Well,
I'm on the safe side.
here's the deal, and I'm thinking about this the other day. My Nana was a prepper because she canned every year, so she would have what she needed through the winter. And when springtime came and things were available, she canned that stuff to make sure the family had what they needed through. Weren't all of our grandparents and great-grandparents all the way back, weren't they all preppers when you consider that? You know?
Yeah. You know, my grandmother
Everybody was.
pickled watermelon rinds, and they were delicious. My grandmother's passed away a number of years ago. I haven't seen anything like that since. She also pickled pig's feet and stuff too, but they were good in their own way. But you get my point. They, just what you said, they canned all kinds of stuff, Dave.
When they didn't rely on the government. They knew if they didn't work, they didn't eat. You know, so they were humble enough to get out and get dirty and do what it took to make sure that there was food. And my grandparents, my mother's family, my mother was number 10, and they had 11 total. So those kids had to eat. So when they got old enough, they had to work and pitch in, and that's how it was done. And that creates great families, great memories, and great examples for the kids. But little by little, jump ahead 50, 60, 70 years, and the whole world's changed. The people have they don't think ahead like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and being able to make sure you can purify your water. Last week, my water was coming out of the tap like mud, and called the city, and they came right out and they told me there was nothing wrong with it. And I go, look at it. And he said, there's nothing wrong with it. So he went out to he went out to the road, and they opened up the fire plug and blew water out in the road, and it came out like mud. He said, then he comes to me and says, it's your water heater. I said, I have a brand new water heater. So you know, the ability to clean your water and to eat something is important. We have hurricanes down here, and a few years ago we had 4 come through. We had enough food in the house to last like 2.5, 3 days. And fortunately, I had a Jeep and was able to get up to it's like a gas station to get food for a couple of days. After that, I said, we're going to have some extra water, and we're going to have some extra cans of stuff so that we're okay.
Oh, I heard this thing. Your hot water heater is about 40 gallons of potable water. If ever there's a crisis, you just cut your water off. I mean, if the water gets polluted, so you can't drink it. And you can siphon your hot water tank, because that water should be drinkable.
Mine has a plug-in on the bottom where you can screw a water hose and just drain it right out.
Yeah. Plus, they say to fill your bathtub up. We've kind of slid way off of Nehemiah here, but
yeah,
how does this happen? I blame David. It's got to be David's fault.
Yeah.
It is my fault. Ask my wife.
One of the things about him is he faced hatred and opposition, which you'll see in chapter 4, with determination and preparation. Always think of that great line where they have a trowel and they're moving bricks or whatever they're doing in one hand, and they got a sword strapped on them, and if they need to, they can grab that with the other hand, a trowel and a sword. They worked on the wall, but were prepared to fight if they had to. And because they were prepared, I think that's why they didn't get attacked.
Right. And the enemy, here's the deal. Predators know other predators. They're less likely to attack a predator. If they attack the weak. My wife was gone for a week, so I don't work the remote without her. So I'm watching kids programs like Animal Planet. And I was watching like a Cape buffalo was getting attacked by a lion, and a nearby elephant came over and helped the Cape buffalo. So when they look over and they see you're prepared, they're less likely to come after you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Look at.
I should also add, he did have guards that were full-time guards too, and he had trumpets like in the cavalry. If they attack this part of the wall, we'll blow the trumpets and all the guards will converge. Because they were prepared, I imagine the enemy sent people around and found out they were not a soft target.
Right, and that's I look at if I got look at Joe the plumber, he came out and did some things, and they showed him up. They were all over him, but they don't get Glenn Beck as much because Glenn Beck has got money. He has the ability to fight back, so they have to be careful how they do him because they're going to find themselves against a guy with a ton of money. It's the same thing. When you look over and that guy's prepared, then maybe another target.
One more thing that Nehemiah did, I think it's interesting. He was self-sacrificing financially. You'll see this in Nehemiah 5:1-16, but especially the last part of that. Basically, he said, I could have, as former governors, since he had the documents from the king, former governors, I could have put a tax on the people to support me, and so he could have lived royally off taxing the people. He said they were already financially struggling as it was. Not only did he not tax them as he legally could have, he used his own money, he and his brothers and helpers, and he had his own table, and he fed 150 other people. Now, they don't really give a lot of, well, at least I didn't see a lot of details on his financing, but my guess is he saved a lot of money when he was in Babylon, and he had financial money he got out of Babylon, and he worked himself. But the point is that he was financially self-sacrificing, just like the Apostle Paul. And there's something to be admirable. Not that it's wrong to pay minister salaries, but it's something admirable to do it for the sake of the people only, not for money.
Yeah,
No, I
another
agree.
good reason to be prepared, because being prepared puts you in a position to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah, and I was thinking earlier about how Paul would go city to city, and he would get crowds together, and he would preach against what was going on in the city. And it looks like Nehemiah did the same kind of thing. And when Moses went back into Egypt with Aaron, I mean, God's protection is why when he went in and had to the royal court and said, you're going to let my people go. Anybody else, they would have just arrested him and crucified him. But they didn't do that because he had that protection, and he knew he had the protection. And I find it interesting that Paul would be stoned, but then would go to the next city. It was like he didn't really have the protection in the same way that Moses did, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think one of our teachers at Big Sandy said, obviously, God never let them kill Paul or stop Paul until probably he was an older man, and they believe he was executed behind Caesar's throne when he was an older man. But Paul was chased out of cities by many, 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 many mobs. He was threatened many times. He was even when they rescued him in Jerusalem, He probably got a few blows put to his body before he was rescued, and that time he was stoned. I'm just saying this, but the Bible doesn't make it clear. They thought he was dead, and then he pops up and walks away. Is it possible that God just brought him back to life?
I've thought that because stoning is brutal, and depending, I guess a couple ways they do it, but generally you're dead, and if God resurrected him, that really tells you of the character of the man. Because if that had happened to me and God resurrected me, I'd say, Lord, can we stop now? But not Paul. He just goes right into the next city, just boldly presents the truth of God.
And even if he was unconscious, a couple of big bricks hit him in the head, even if he were unconscious, the fact that he pops up and walks away, you think carry me off in a stretcher or a wheelchair. You know what I'm saying? After that, that shows
even
you.
if he didn't resurrect him, he healed him.
Yes.
Right there on the spot, enough to function.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Now Paul did get some spectacular rescues too, when he was under threat. But sometimes at sea, that rescue at sea, that's pretty exciting stuff. But it's scary stuff too. Or when the poisonous snake latched on and pumped all its venom into Paul. And I guess we need to have the faith that Nehemiah and Paul had, that God is with us. Be brave, be bold. And even if we are martyred at some point, it's to our credit.
Nehemiah went and went back home, and they little by little reverted right back to what they were doing before, and he had to go a second time. And then to go face them again. The fact that God asked him to do this or told him to do this made him a very, very special person. That God picked him out of everybody he could have picked. He had a whole world to choose from. He picked him.
Yep. The next one on your list here says maintain sustained focus. He kept his eye on the prize, so to speak, and nose to the grindstone, all the euphemisms or whatever for that, and he didn't lose focus. He stayed on point. He didn't drift off. He didn't let things drag him, world or life, drag him off to some other objective. He stayed on target, on point.
Speaking of staying on point, there's a man who wrote a 499-page, what I call a 500-page book about the Passover, because he has some different Passover theories. And he basically, he really says that Ezra and Nehemiah, who were there in the canonization of the Old Testament, he says these guys are under great pressure and they compromise, which is, saying that parts of the Bible are wrong is pretty wild stuff. But he says it in his own academically drawn out form. And that's pretty scary. They faced a lot of pressure, but there's no indication in the Bible that they ever compromised. Let me read 6:11. This is his famous quote while he was under pressure. Under pressure, I'll give you a little bit of background. The Arabs and the other enemies, the Moabites and other enemies, had paid a false prophet to come to Nehemiah and say, look, I've gotten this vision, and they're going to kill you. The assassins are on their way. Why don't you go inside one of the inner rooms of the temple and hide for the night? Now, the reason that was a double trap, one, if you take the hero when he runs and hides, other people won't be so courageous. Two, because he was not a priest, he was not supposed to be in those inner rooms, he could be discredited based on the law. So they're going to get him on both ends. That was the plot. Well, of course, when they told him these guys were sure to come and try to kill him, his Nehemiah 6:11, and he said, and the guy says, they're going to come and kill you tonight. He said, should such a man as I flee? And who is there such as I who would go into the temple to save his life? I will not go in. I like that term. Should a man such as I run and hide? Like, I'm not the type. They're going to have to take me. I'm not running and hiding anywhere. And that is courage. And those people who say that those two men who work together, well, not necessarily simultaneously, but their works worked together to reestablish the temple, and then the temple services and all the good stuff that brought God's people back, from captivity. To say that those guys compromised because you don't agree with a few things written in the Bible, that is scary stuff. But this guy wrote a 500-page book. He says that. I read it with my own little eyes.
God would allow something in his book that shouldn't have been there.
By the way, here's a quote that somebody sent me because of what the Supreme Court did. They said, "If we ever forget that we are a nation under God, we will soon be a nation gone under." Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, and I think the really big story here is just that the faith. He had courage, but his courage was through faith. And he had that faith because he had a relationship with God. And he knew God is my Father. He's going to use me for the right things. He's going to protect me until my job is done. So he had faith in God, and that you can only have that kind of faith through having a real deep personal relationship with God. And I'd say he was a smart man, a very smart man.
Just a few final comments on him, if that's okay. They had one of the greatest Feast of Tabernacles ever, he and Ezra. He loved the feast. He threw that foreigner, they set up a little office for him in the temple area. He threw him out of the temple courtyard, just like Christ did the money changers. I call it righteous anger. And so there's a lot of great things we can say about Nehemiah, a great hero. And you can read more about it on our webpage. There'll be an article. Either it's up or it will be up soon, that area4.com. Next week, we're going to have the fourth commandment. And that is correct, right, Ken? I believe that's correct. I looked at the schedule.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Okay. I was thinking about this. See what you all think of this. We already did a program about a year ago where we talked about how they substituted the day of the sun god for the Sabbath to avoid persecution and being lumped in with the Jews. We could mention that again a little bit. But I was thinking maybe we could focus more on the positive side of the Sabbath. I mean, not the historical so much. How if we learn to keep the Sabbath better, we'll be more spiritual, closer to God, and happier, and kind of focus on the how.
That's a good idea. The spiritual aspect to the Sabbath, what it's for, basically what you get out of it.
And remind me to mention that thing. Well, there's the Sabbath thing, but we can mention it next week, where he stopped the bazaars opening. They're sort of like their little front shops from opening on the Sabbath. We can mention that next week because I think it'd be more appropriate to bring it up in discussion of the Sabbath. And we could bring that up too about Nehemiah. And people have questions about how to enjoy the Sabbath. You can email Ken. Tell me where the email is, Ken.
lineuponline2810@gmail.com. So it's lineuponline2810@gmail.com. We have a question, and it's a large piece of news. You know, in light of all the news that hit today, I forgot to mention this. The Vatican signed a treaty with the state of Palestine. This is Marion sent us this question. They signed a treaty with the state of Palestine today, saying it hoped its legal recognition of the state would help stimulate peace with Israel, and that the treaty itself would serve as a model for other Mid-East countries. They've signed a treaty, the Vatican. Who's the Vatican to sign a treaty with anybody, first of all? That's the number one question. A treaty with what? I mean, trade? I mean, what's the treaty for? It's just a statement, and it's a statement that the Vatican recognizes Palestine. If Palestine is ever a state gets to have their own government and their own military, and that place there'd be more tanks and military arms on the ground than human beings over there in 3 days' time. and it would fill up instantaneously, and that would be it would be bedlam, mayhem.
That's really a stab in the back at Israel, because they did that without Israel's permission. And Israel basically has always taken the position, we're willing for a two-state solution, but it has to be on the Palestinians have to, one, recognize Israel has a right to exist, and not, in other words, their goal can't be to destroy Israel. And they have to, do other things that make Israel feel secure. It'd be like turning over half your land, because Israel still militarily controls the West Bank and some of those other locations. It'd be like turning over half of your military strategic position to your enemy. And in other words, doing this without Israel agreeing to it is a stab in the back. It gives legal recognition. And so legally, they're not going to be able to hassle Israel more legally. Granted, it won't do much beyond that, because Israel's not going to pull their control of the West Bank away. But I think it may mean, in the long run, it puts the Vatican in a position of saying, we want to be the peace broker for the Middle East. Can you see how a future super pope and a dictator in Europe can say at some future point, we need to take over that Jerusalem to bring peace to the Middle East because it's up to us. And then guess who gets to sit in that temple?
You betcha. Isn't it crazy?
I mean,
you couldn't see it a short period of time ago as easy as you could see it now. I mean, it just we knew kind of how the outcome would kind of get there, kind of vague. Now it's the light shining on it so much it's hard to not see what's going on.
and I say this, if next year or the year after that they have a financial collapse of the euro and Europe goes to a great recession, you and I both know this will help evil dictators come to power in Europe, like with Adolf Hitler.
Yep.
And also, if Putin continues to rattle the saber in Eastern Europe, the European and America continues to pull back, create a power vacuum, as we clearly have, it almost is forcing Europe to create its own powerful military machine and dictator.
Yep.
The other thing I'm hearing, and I haven't proven this yet, but I'm being told, is that the Pope has made some comments about church, the Greek Orthodox and the Church of England and the other Catholic type churches. Some of them keep like Easter on different days and some stuff like that's not the same. And he's willing to change the dates and times and stuff so that they can all be on the same page to bring them all back together. Somebody was telling me that. I haven't proven that, but if that's the case, that would be a real strategic move to grab more control over other parts of the Catholic Church worldwide.
Yep, he's putting a band back together.
It could be very, very big, very big in the future.
Yep. Thank you again, Marion, for that question. I appreciate that. We have another one that's now that I don't know what's next on the docket for the Supreme Court, but it's like now that it's becoming so widely accepted, this gay marriage and that, what's next? What's the next big issue facing the United States? I don't know. Is it gun control? What is it?
Well, they're talking about possibly changing the money to get all those evil founders' pictures off of it. And they're talking about taking down Thomas Jefferson's bust. I heard a guy the other day said that somebody told him when they start making rainbow money that, color like reds and money that looks more European,
Funny
we're in trouble.
By the way, they also made a decision this week on Jerusalem. The Supreme Court, and I guess our State Department pushed it in court, that said Jerusalem is not the capital of Israel. I mean, for American, passport, etc. purpose, the Supreme Court went along with that. That is a slap at Israel's sovereignty. And then my wife said this. She said, well, if America is slapping Israel around, even this is maybe just diplomatically, what makes us think that God's going to bless us if we're not going to support Israel?
He's not.
No.
He's not. You're delusional to think that this country. I told my wife 20-something years ago that if we ever made it national law for homosexual marriage, that the country is done. God
That's pretty
does
much
not
what
bless that.
everybody's posting on Facebook. Everybody's posting that on Facebook.
That the
Gay
country is
marriage.
going downhill.
It's no back, and there's people. I think get the feeling this was kind of the last straw of many straws, but it's over.
It's
You
one
can't.
more finger in the face of God from our Christian president.
The government shouldn't even be involved in granting marriage licenses to begin with. Who is the government to give a license for? I mean, I heard, I never checked it out, but I was told, and I forget where I heard it from, that it was once again, I think it was progressives, or they started granting marriage licenses to stop interracial marriage. The government did it. That's what I've heard. I don't know if it's the case or not,
I
but it
know
wouldn't surprise me.
I'm lucky. I'm not allowed, as a minister, I'm not allowed to perform weddings in the state of Florida because I can, but I have to go get another registration or license on top of that for them to recognize it. I haven't done it, so I'm not going to have anybody come to me and say, "Would you marry Joe and Bo?" You know.
So all the ministers need to move to Florida now.
That's what I'm saying.
You got to legal out.
Wow.
This could lead to persecution of Christian colleges and churches, though. It's possible legally.
Yeah, I think that's next. In my opinion, the next thing is an all-out onslaught against Christians.
At least those that believe in the Bible.
Yep. Yes. I think is that anybody that I'm talking about nominal Christians. I think is going to be an all-out onslaught against Christianity as the world knows it. I think it's going to be a full court. Nobody's doing anything about the murders and tortures and the Christian slaves that are over there right now in the Middle East. Nobody's lifting a finger for them.
They're drowning them.
Isn't
They're
that
putting them in cages.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Putting them in cages and dropping them to lakes and letting them drown.
Right. And now they're viewed over here as, backwards, dolts, don't believe in global warming, clinging to their guns, and all that kind of rhetoric is what they put on them here, and it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse.
You've been clinging to your guns and your Bible. You folks know better than that.
Yeah, but I don't know. And now, they're going after this flag, and Amazon. Everybody's banning everything that has a Confederate battle flag. Everybody's banning it, and they're just going. They've gone mad.
I talked to her about wrapping my truck in one, like the Dukes of Hazzard. She said, "You're not spending money on that."
You're not spending money on that. Yeah, it's gone from one. It doesn't represent anything like it used to. It's gone. It's now a kind of rebel against the society, the government. Anyway.
Yeah, we negotiate with terrorists now.
Oh yes, and we negotiate with terrorists. Heck, well, I'm not going to go any further with that.
We can see how that's going to end, right? Negotiate with terrorists. That's going to solve our problem, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, that'll work. So anyway, we've really burned one up this a bunch of time. We've gone over our. I put on the show 45 minutes. I don't know why I bother. I don't think we've ever hit that once.
By the way, here's a verse, an interesting verse. Psalms 122:6. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. You want to be blessed, pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Yeah, I think maybe that's the next focus. It'll switch over to there with what the Pope has done and what the Middle East is on fire. I think maybe the focus will turn. Eventually, it's gonna turn there. The news and the focus is going to be over there more so than it is maybe with us over here. So, I want to thank everybody for watching. Do you have any? Is there any final words, or are we? Is that it? Well, then we want to thank everyone watching for what's episode 105. Hard to believe we've got that many out, but we do. And we want to thank for you for the questions. Remember, next week, watch on Google Plus, log in, and you can click on that box there, and you can ask a question. That was 2 great questions tonight. We appreciate that, and it'll help keep us flowing. Now, if I can keep monologuing long enough here, I can get to the intro and get it fired up. So, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Ken, good job.
To make God's word more clear. Until next time, may God be with you in everything you try. But for now, till next week, we have to say goodbye.
Good night, everybody. Have a wonderful Sabbath.
You too.